Hello, this is Bernard Albertson, and this is Sunday morning, January the 25th. And I'm really not an expert on much of anything. But at 76 years of age, I have had some experience in several fields. And one of those fields was raising 4 children after the death of my wife. And so I'd like to share a little bit with you this morning about a Christian home, about trust in your children, about honor. Every day, as most of you know, we have a Bible study at bernardalbertson.com. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I would like to share with you a personal experience that I had many years ago in 1963. That's before most of you watching this were ever born. Now, at that time, I was doing what was called outside sales work for a very large corporation. And I had gone to a gentleman's home in Indiana, made an estimate on some remodeling, had a contract signed, and shook hands and walked to my car. But before I could leave, the gentleman came out, and in his hands were 2 Bibles, large print Bibles, paperback. They weren't expensive, King James Version. And he said, "May I give these to you?" And I took them and said, "Yes, you may." And I looked at it and saw that it was a large print Bible. And I had an aunt at that time who had difficulty reading her Bible because she was of advanced age. Actually, she was a little younger than I am now. But so I took them, and he said, "May I tell you something?" And I said, "Of course you may." And so he proceeded to tell me that several years prior to that, a couple of 3, his wife had died. And he had a 13-year-old daughter at the time and was working a full-time job. And his daughter would go to school, and she would come home and do her homework, and they would sit and as a father and daughter and spend the evening together and play board games and do whatever children do with their parents. But he said, I was overprotective of her. And I said, "Well, how so?" And he said, "Well, she came home from school one day, did her homework, and I came home from work, and I saw a boy leaving. And so I went in the house, and I said, 'Who was that?' And she said, 'That was a friend from school. We were doing our homework together.'" Pardon me. And he said, "What did I tell you about having boys in this house? You're 13 years old. You are not to have boys in this house." And he said, "I was so protective of her and so afraid that something would happen to her that I restricted her. I restricted her for a month. No school activities, no social activities." And he said, "I went to work, came home, everything was fine." He said, "I went to the grocery store, came home, and I found her dead in her bedroom." And he said, "Beside her was my pistol." And he said, "There was a note." And he took the wallet out of his pocket. And out of that wallet, he pulled a note out that he'd had in there for some time. And he handed the note to me, and there were tears in his eyes. It was a simple note. It said, "Dear Daddy, I'm so very sorry that I disappointed you. Please forgive me." So I read that note and I handed it back to him and drove away. And I used that Bible until the pages wore out. I used that Bible until the spine on it split completely in two. Now, this was in 1963. In the late 1970s, my wife died. And I had 4 children. And I was in business for myself. And I lost that business prior to my wife dying. And so, at that time, I was working for General Motors. And every day I would come home, and that thought would be on my mind about that 13-year-old child. And I must tell you that when you're raising children by yourself, it seems to me that about 80 or 90% of the decisions that you make are wrong, and they seem to be wrong because of the age difference between you and your children. So the only thing you can do is the best you can. But that man's story in 1963 helped me through that, because it taught me to trust in my children, to question everything, but to trust, and to show them honor, and to show them that I did believe in them. And so I'm going to close, but I needed to share that with you, because those of you that are single parents, whether it be through death or divorce or whatever the reason, I implore you, trust in God, teach your children about Christ, but trust them. Trust them. Show them that you believe in them, and brag on them. So I love you. Have a great day, and I'll see you another time.